Welcome back to Reliving Retro. This is Season 5, Episode 10. And if you're new here, we pick one game at random, invite a guest on to rate it in 5 different categories: story, gameplay, visuals, sound, and how well it aged. And I just want to say thank you to Andre for coming on this week. So why don't you go ahead and explain a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I run the YouTube channel GameXplain. We cover all kinds of things related to gaming, like analysis, reviews, previews, discussions, all kinds of things. We focus primarily on Nintendo, so we're doing deep dives into the new Nintendo or the recent Nintendo Direct, like Mario Wonder, the new Princess Peach game that they didn't give a name yet, and everything else in there. So, yeah, that's what we do.
Wonder looks so good, doesn't it?
It looks amazing. It's like this is how I used to feel about Mario games as a kid. It's like that, like you have the next big thing. It looks exciting, which we haven't had from 2D Mario in some time. 3D Mario's been fine. 2D Mario though, I feel like it's been missing. So Wonder looks absolutely like a complete blast.
I saw somebody post on Twitter, and it might have been you, honestly. I can't remember who it was, so apologies if it was you. But somebody posted that this is the first new 2D Mario game that didn't have like new in the title since Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins.
Yeah, sounds like something I would have tweeted or did tweet. Yeah. For me as a longtime Mario fan, like it's crazy to me that we really haven't had a new proper 2D Mario that didn't have new in the name, ironically, since Mario Land 2. And it's like, wow, how is that possible?
Seems so crazy.
It's been too long.
It's insane. All right, quick getting to know you questions. What would you say your introduction to gaming was? Your first console, how you got it, how old you were, that kind of thing?
It was the Atari 2600. I don't even know how old I was. It's probably 3 to 5, somewhere in that age. And I had a bunch of games for it, but Donkey Kong was the one that really stuck out to me, I think, without even fully realizing that was like a Nintendo game then. It was weird to be playing a Nintendo game on a non-Nintendo platform, but, you know, as a kid, I didn't know any better. So I love the game. That, along with Pac-Man, Space Invaders, those all got me. Those were all my first foray into gaming, really. Although there may be one other game, I may have even mentioned it before, where it may have preceded it. I forget exactly, but there was a PC game. I remember I went to a hospital to have like a minor surgery. I was like feeling out of it. I came home. I was like sore and just upset. And my dad put a game on the computer for me, a game where you play as like this construction equipment, that like a vehicle, and you're pushing blocks around. I don't even know what game that is. I don't know if anyone knows what that game is anymore, but that might technically be my first video game, but I
That's awesome.
remember it. Yeah.
What would you say your favorite types of games to play are? Are they like platformers?
Oh man, I'm all over the place these days. Probably, if you had to narrow me down, I would say probably platformers, just because that's what got me started in gaming primarily. Like I mentioned with Donkey Kong, I love the classic 2D Marios. I like 3D platformers. You know, even games like Banjo-Kazooie, for instance. Yeah. So if I had to choose one, it'd probably be that. Even if I don't necessarily play a ton of them these days, though, of course, I'm always there for a new Mario or Donkey Kong game. I mean, Donkey Kong's another series we need a new installment in. It's been 10 years since the last true new entry in that series as well.
My wife was just asking about that actually. She's like, is there a new Donkey Kong Country coming out soon? And I was like,
there should be.
No.
Where are they?
She's like, do they have one on the Switch? I was like, kind of, technically. I was like, they have Tropical Freeze, but that was a Wii U title. I was like, so they just ported it over to the Switch. And she's like, did I play that one? I'm like, yeah, you beat that one already. She's like, oh, okay.
But it has new funky mode now, so what better reason to revisit it than for funky?
True. What games have you been playing lately?
Oh man, I have been so hooked on, not to make a pun, on a game called, I'm sure a lot of people, I say that only because I'm relatively new to it, but everyone else knows it, Dead by Daylight. I've been obsessed with this game. It's been out, it's celebrating its 7th anniversary now. I only started playing about 6 months ago, and I don't think a game has gotten its hooks into me like this game has, where I'm playing it almost every day. I've got my friends into it, I've got my sister into it, who doesn't really play online games, but now we play together almost every day when we have time after work, and it's just a complete blast. For those who don't know, it's like a 4 versus 1 game where one person's a killer, the other 4 people are trying to survive. Just a ton of fun. I'm obsessed, and that's been my main game recently, to the point that I don't think I've been playing really anything else except for what I need to for work, like the Pikmin 4 demo, which was fun. I would play it anyway, but
our buddy Brian from Drink a Beer Play a Game, he streams that one quite often, and so I've watched him play it quite a bit. I've never played it myself, but it does look like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's if you like stressful experience, if you like being stressed and on the edge of your seat constantly, it's a great game. If you want to unwind and just relax, I do not recommend it at all.
It's hilarious.
That's funny. All right, so yeah, you guys can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, TikTok, Spotify if you're watching us on YouTube if you're listening to us on Spotify. Also check out our Twitch channel. That's where we stream every single week. And we also have a Patreon for $2 a month. You can get your game played much faster. We have a Patreon episode in 2 weeks. So if you want to go ahead and join the Patreon, get your game into that list, you have a lot better chance of us playing it more quickly, I guess. All right, Andre, how long did you play Kirby this week?
Oh, I did not play it at all this week. However, I watched you play it right before this. And you played through the entire game on stream. But I actually did replay it not too long ago. I picked it up randomly because I had the analog pocket. Like, oh, let me revisit the original Kirby game. And kind of like you, I was almost surprised to remember how short that game is. You can legit beat that in 30 minutes in a casual playthrough.
Yeah. Yeah, very casual. I think I died once, and the game is so forgiving that it just is like, you want to continue right where you left off? And I'm like, absolutely. And yeah. What about you, Yaiser? How long did you play this game for?
Maybe like an hour. I got to King DTD on New Game Plus.
Nice. It's a lot harder.
Though. It's way harder, yeah. Most of it is anyways. There's one boss that's basically the same fight, but
yeah. I played it for about an hour on the Switch, and then I played it for about an hour on stream. So I guess I played it in about 2 hours total. That's actually a lie. I think I played it for only a half hour on the Switch. But with Rewind, it's so easy. So it's so nice that it's on there. But I thought I was going to need Rewind a lot because I used it a lot on the Switch. And then when I streamed it, I was like, okay, I only died once. That's not too bad. But the game overall, I'd say, is fairly easy. I'd never played it before this week. Yaiser, you'd never played it before this week either, right?
No, nope.
No. And Andre, you had experience with it, right?
Oh, I grew up with it. Yeah, it was one of my first Game Boy games, if not the first. And, that was back in the era when everyone thought Kirby was, a white character rather than the pink one we know him as now.
Right.
At least, in the US. In Japan, they had the proper colors all along. So me and Kirby go way back.
That's funny. I've never gotten into any of the Kirby games. I never grew up playing any of them. I never because for the Super Nintendo, I never had any of them. And then when I got to the 64, I remember seeing Kirby 64 and the Crystal Shards. I remember seeing it in the stores, but I had no idea what it was just because I never played any of the games before that. It wasn't until Smash Bros. 64 that I ever even used Kirby as a character.
Wow.
And then even when I was playing through this game, seeing all the items the maximum tomato and the star and stuff like that, seeing all those items is just wow, look at all the items from Kirby that are in Smash Bros. It's crazy.
Yeah,
so funny to see that.
Looking back, it's amazing. It's impressive how much of Kirby's DNA has been retained throughout the series. A lot of the most popular songs, like Green Greens, it still shows up relatively frequently. The major exception though is the fact that there's no copy abilities in this game. I think the only Kirby game, or the only mainline Kirby game, to not have the copy ability function, which is crazy because when you think of Kirby these days, that's exactly what you think of.
Right.
Yeah, I was waiting when I was sucking people in. I was waiting for maybe it's a special guy I gotta get to copy him. I don't know, but it just never happened.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. All right, so let's start off with story here. Andre, you want to kick us off with story?
Yeah, I mean, what story? This is basically, for me, this was almost a 1 out of 5. There's almost nothing here. There's no proper intro. The only slight glimmer of a story you have is the ending cutscene where you see Kirby return the food to Dreamland. But we had no idea that was the case unless you read the instruction manual, which, to be fair, wasn't uncommon in that era. A lot of games set up the story only in the instruction manual. But I'm giving it another point, or a point, however we do this. So 2 out of 5. Based on the little vignettes they have between levels. They have no story to them either, at least they don't relate to the main story, but they're cute and they add some character. So I will give it a 2 out of 5 based on those and the fact that the ending does address the story, whatever level story it was.
Yeah, I was at 2 out of 5 as well, and then I read the manual. And the manual doesn't give you a whole lot, but it does tell you that King Dedede came to Dreamland to steal all of the Dreamlanders' food, essentially. But I bumped it up an extra point because they described King Dedede as gluttonous, and I thought that was hilarious. So, so I gave it a 2.5 for story. What about you, Yaiser?
Nice. I had a 2.5 too.
Nice.
I just read through the story real quick right before we started here, and yeah, it's pretty basic. Doesn't do anything in the game, and I think that's basically the score I give all these types of games that do all the same thing.
Yeah, where there's not really any game progression or any story progression inside the game itself. But I will say that like having a big fat penguin king come and take your food is a little bit different than like the normal, oh, you have to save the princess or you have to save your girlfriend or whatever, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
I thought it was a nice little change of pace, I guess, although having a fat penguin as the antagonist is pretty hilarious.
Yeah, it is kind of a dark story. Like, King Dedede just leaves this entire kingdom to starve to death, and
yeah,
that's kind of, when you think about it in those terms, yeah. And I do like the angle you brought up, the fact that it wasn't a retread of the typical like Princess Desmond in distress.
Right.
So Kirby was switching things up already early into his career. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, let's head over to gameplay here. Yaiser, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. This game was a lot of fun, man. I didn't expect, honestly, to have this much fun. I didn't expect to have such fun boss fights, man. They were so much fun. It was a lot of fun. I had way more fun than I thought. I was torn here between this score. I'm gonna go. Okay, so I can't. Obviously, it's not a 5. I'm between 4.5 and 4 here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna dock it a little bit for being so short. And some of the platforming, was like what was it? The second level there, where it's just like door after door after door you gotta fucking go through and not really know where you're going.
That could be annoying.
That bothered me a little bit. So I'm gonna land on a 4 here. But I thought it was awesome that they not only were the boss fights good, but the New Game Plus, not only is it just harder, but they like added enemies to the fights too. Like, yeah, it was really cool. Yeah, it surprised me, honestly.
What about you, Andre?
This one's tough. I'm between a 3 and a 4. I'll probably give it a 3 though, just because like the gameplay it's perfect for what it is. Like I don't know what more I would want from what they were aiming for in this case, but inherently, I don't find it to be like super fun in general, like compared to other platformers. Like it's slower, it's a little bit more plodding than like the ones I generally play, like Mario or Donkey Kong. But I still like it for what it does, and the game is short too, which I don't think is necessarily a negative, but how short this game is does stand out. Now, it does have the New Game Plus, which helps mitigate that to a degree, but it's such a step up in difficulty that I wish they almost had like a middle ground between the two as the default or as an option at the least.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a 3 out of 5. I think it's good. Didn't blow me away, but it still holds up. It's simple and accessible.
And as someone that other than Pokemon, really, I didn't really dive into Game Boy as a kid. I played Pokemon, I played Super Mario Land, Tetris. That was basically it, right? My top 5 games, 3 of them were Pokemon. So, it was Pokemon Red, Pokemon Yellow, Pokemon Blue were my top 3 games as a kid. I think this Kirby game made it into my top 5 for Game Boy games.
Wow.
Now, again, I don't have a ton of experience with Game Boy games. I will say that Metal Gear Solid is up there as a Game Boy Color game because we just played that one this season, and that one was phenomenal. I gave gameplay a 4. I had a lot of fun with it, even though there was no copying ability and stuff like that, which again, this is my first Kirby game, so I guess it was a good one to start with. I mean, considering it was the first Kirby game, right? This one came out before Kirby Adventure.
Correct. This is the very first one. Yep.
Yeah. So I guess it makes sense to start with this one. I had a lot of fun with it. The boss fights, like Yaiser said, I thought were a lot of fun. I was a little disappointed that when I got to Mount Dedede, that it was just a boss rush, and then you know what I mean? Like it's already such a short game.
Right. You just faced him like 5 minutes ago, and you're fighting him again.
Yeah. It's already such a short game that you know what I mean. Kind of just retreading like the bosses. I felt like they could have done something for a little bit more content. However, it is nice to actually just pick up something and be able to like, okay, I can beat this in one sitting. Like that's kind of nice. And it's a somewhat like it's an enjoyable experience. Like it's not too hard. I don't get very frustrated while playing it. And like I said, I had a good time playing it. So this is definitely one of the favorites that I've played so far this season, I think, for me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, gameplay, give it a 4.
That's awesome. If you don't mind, I just want to add a couple of comments I thought of during that.
For sure.
One is the I just want to circle back to the lack of copy abilities, because I feel like that might be the biggest thing people bump up against going back to this one after playing the rest of the series.
Yeah.
But I do like how it does feel distinct, though, because you do play the game differently than you do modern Kirby's. Like, modern Kirby's are all about grabbing an ability and using that to traverse. Whereas this one, it's more, there's more of a back and forth, because like the enemies are your ammo, essentially. So you need to get close, suck it up, use that as your projectile. And that's kind of cool. That's an element that we've largely lost. And you can still technically play Kirby games that way if you really wanted to. No one does really, but I do think that's an interesting mechanic going back that they kind of stepped away from. And then also, I do want to touch on the boss fights real quick, as you guys brought up, because I do like how I think they are good, and I like how I think they're all single screen as well. So it really does kind of test your ability in maneuvering Kirby around this small confined space where it can't just fly to evade everything like it can in most of the levels. So yeah, I think the boss fights are definitely a standout too.
Quickly before we move on to visuals, Yaiser, what was your favorite boss fight?
Probably DT8, the first one, not the second one, because that shit was hard as shit. It was only hard. He just seemed so much faster. The window to get down there and like grab one of those stars from the jump, it seemed like impossible to even grab one.
Yeah, I had to look that up because I didn't know how I was supposed to be hurting him.
Yeah, I did too. But
see, I also kind of love that. Like, it's almost like a fourth wall break, where it's this imagery that appears that you think is just a cool detail. It's like, oh, that's actually what I need to use to attack him. I
had no idea. But then when you read the manual and it says that King Dedede also took like your shining stars, you're like, oh, okay, I guess that makes more sense than in the final boss, that like you suck those up to shoot back at him. But yeah, when I was originally playing it, I had no idea. What about you, Andre? Did you have a favorite boss fight?
I'd say King Dedede as well. Like, the whole theme of being in a boxing ring, it feels like it's a true one-on-one battle. You've got the awesome music. Spoilers for the music section. It's just a fun setting. It's a tough boss. Like, that one actually is a little bit harder compared to the rest, which I enjoyed, and it does feel like it's a fitting climax for the experience that Kirby's Dream Land is.
For sure. I think my favorite might be like the fighter jet one. I don't know the guy's name or anything like that, but the one where you're like shooting at the well, I guess he's not like
that was
jet, but he's like a blimp thing, right?
Too, man. Yeah,
that was one of the harder ones, but I thought that one was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was change things up. I like that too.
All right, let's move over to visuals. I'll kick us off here. I think the visuals look great, especially for Game Boy. I landed on a 4.5. I love how like the sprites are big. You can see what's going on. The only thing that like sometimes a couple of things that like you could pick up, it was kind of hard to like tell what those were. I only knew that the one thing that you can use is actually a microphone. I thought it was like a candle or something like that you pick up and then all the enemies die. I thought it was a candle initially, but when I looked it up in the manual, it said it was a microphone. I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense, because he does like scream afterwards or whatever that noise is.
I like the idea that he's burning himself on the candle, and that's why he screams.
Yeah, right. I had no idea what was going on. I was just like, okay, I guess that kills everyone. Cool. But no, I thought the game looked great. I gave it a 4.5. What about you, Yaiser?
This was hard because I didn't know what to judge. Like, am I supposed to judge green and black, like Game Boy screen?
Right.
Or am I supposed to judge the color version, which I played on the Switch, which I think looked fucking great. So I'm gonna give it a 4.
Okay.
Because all the sprites and everything look pretty cool. The bosses I thought were cool designs. And basically, I mean, it could have been higher, but I had to, if I were to play it black and white or black and green, whatever you want to call it, I wouldn't have definitely wouldn't have gave it that much. But yeah, I'll give it a 4 because it looked great in color.
Okay. What about you, Andre?
That green screen of the original Game Boy doesn't do any game a whole lot of favors, does
tough,
it?
Yeah.
I'm going 5 out of 5. I think Kirby's Dream Land, going back to it, I was on this huge retro kick once I got the Analog Pocket in a year or two ago, and I was addicted to playing through a ton of games, including those I hadn't played. I thought Kirby's Dream Land held up visually amazing. I'm like, this game still looks great. It's got a clean look, big sprites, easily readable, giant bosses. Like Wispy Woods is impressive just with how it consumes basically the entire screen. It's all fluid. There's only a little bit slowdown in, I think, in a couple of stages when there's a lot happening on screen, but barely worth mentioning. Yeah, I just think it has a really good, nice, clean look to it. So I'm giving it 5 out of 5, especially because as one who, I remember playing a pack on the original Game Boy, it was still readable on that terrible screen, with the motion blur and the, dark, the darker screen and puke pea group, pea soup green. Yeah. It looked good, even on, I mean, maybe not good, but it looked readable even on that. So I have to give it points for that as well.
For sure. And it's cool that you brought up how Wispy Woods looked. It reminded me of like a Contra boss because it was so big and took up like one half of the screen essentially.
Right, yeah, totally.
All right, so let's move over to sound. Andre, you want to kick us off at sound?
Yeah, I'm going 4 out of 5. I mentioned earlier a lot of the classics are here. You got Green Greens, you got DD's Melody, you've got plenty of others I don't remember the names of. I think it still sounds good given the platform. It maybe, never really blew me away. Game Boy had very limited hardware, of course, especially in the audio sense. But I think for what it is, it sounds good. And, it's hard to ask for too much more. But I think there are some Game Boy games that I would say probably had a better soundtrack. But I still think Kirby's is really quite good.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Just to piggyback off you here, I'm gonna add a 0.5 to it. So I'm gonna give it a 4.5 here. I think it's one of the better game. Again, don't have a ton of experience with Game Boy, but as far as Game Boy goes, it's one of the better like soundtracks that I've played so far. And a lot of these were so memorable, and it's probably just because of Smash Bros, right? Because I'm not really a Kirby guy, so it's just so cool to like hear the Game Boy renditions of the stuff that I've heard in Smash Bros. And to me, like they all sounded good, like they all held up in their Game Boy, form, I guess. So I was just like, I was just listening to the music at one point, like on the Switch, I just paused it, or I didn't pause it, but I just like stood there and like stopped playing just to listen to the music, and I thought it sounded great. So yeah, I landed on a 4.5. What about you, Yaiser?
Nice. I had it at a 4 though as well. Nice. Yeah, I thought it sounded great especially for the Game Boy. Actually, because like as I played, I didn't really remember it too much. I didn't play it since like last week. So on my way home from work today, I fired up the soundtrack. It's only like 15 minutes long to hear all of it, but I listened to that on the way home from work, and I'm like, these tracks are pretty sick.
Yeah,
but,
not bad.
Yeah, pretty cool.
That's the good thing about having a game start on the Game Boy. Like they were able to make the music to its strengths rather than having to try and convert music from another platform down to it, like in the Donkey Kong Land series, which I think still sounds good. But Kirby, like they honed in on what worked on the hardware and really made it and really delivered with it.
Yeah, that's a good point for sure. All right, let's move over and see how well this game aged. I'll kick it off here. I gave it a 4.5. I think this game aged incredibly well. Again, my litmus test to this is almost always handed off to my 8-year-old. How long can it hold her attention for? And she played it for quite a while. So that always impresses me with older games. And I would almost say it aged perfectly, except it's just so short. If it was just a little, even if it was like an hour and a half, I feel like that would be a good amount of time, because like for a Game Boy game, like a portable, you bring it in the car or whatever, and like an hour and a half long game, I feel like is like perfect for that. So if it was a little bit longer, then it probably would have got a 5 for me, but 4.5. What about you, Yaiser?
I had it at a 4. It surprised me, honestly. I had a lot of fun with it. I don't know why I never played these games before, but it's definitely fun for sure.
I was surprised when I saw you on over the weekend and you were like, "Oh yeah, dude, I beat Kirby already." And I'm like, "You beat it already?" And you're like, "Yeah, it's like really short. It's like a half hour long." And you were like, "Yeah, I'm really liking it. I've already played like New Game Plus and stuff." And I'm like, "That's crazy," because like you're not a platforming guy, so for it to help like hold up for you like speaks volumes, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and the platforming for me were the parts that I could do without. So I thought the final, like the boss rush at the end, was fine. I was down with that.
Well, yeah, you
I don't need
probably
to
love boss rushes. Yeah.
That's
what about you, Andre?
Yeah, I'm going 4 out of 5 on this. I think it actually holds up remarkably well, to the point that I think it maybe is better these days than it was then. Especially we have better screens now, so you can better enjoy the visuals that they do have. Yeah, I mean, I think it still looks good. It's got a clean look. It sounds good. Gameplay works well enough. And it does offer an interesting angle on Kirby that we don't see these days, that is focused on the non-copyability powers, or Kirby's non-copyability abilities, if you will. And I think that's kind of cool. It's something we'll probably never see again. And I think it's probably one of the better Game Boy games to in terms of how well it's aged. So yeah, I'm going 4 out of 5 as well.
Nice.
Awesome. Yeah. So I mean, total scores here. They look pretty good here. Andre is actually the lowest at a 3.6. Yaiser comes in second at a 3.7, and I gave it a 4.0 flat.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that it was so high, honestly, because again, it's just a Game Boy game. But usually when I rate these, I kind of rate them against themselves, right? So I'm rating this against other Game Boy games, right, that I've played so far. And for me, this definitely stood out, and it also stood the test of time. So yeah, I loved Kirby. So would you recommend, Andre, would you recommend a friend go back and play this if they never have before?
I would. I don't think they need to necessarily go out of their way for it, but at the same time, it's half an hour and it's fun to see Kirby's origin story, despite the lack of story, as we mentioned. Yeah, I would definitely check it out, especially if you're a Kirby fan. It definitely go back to Kirby's Dream Land just to see, where it all began.
Yeah. Nice. And I would say, I think, like, coming from a person that never played any Kirby games, if I'm talking to a person that's never played any Kirby games right now, definitely go check it out.
Yeah.
Just because it's a half hour, you know what I mean? It's a half hour. Like if you're pretty good at platformers, it's 45 minutes if you're terrible, I think, honestly. So, so if it's going to take you an hour to beat it, just to get into like the Kirby series, I think that hour is like really, really worth it. It's a lot of fun. What about you, Yaiser?
Yeah, I agree. Definitely.
Cool. Yeah, I was really surprised. This might be one of the most surprised I've ever been with a game so far, I think.
Yeah.
Just because I kind of can't believe that it was this good. And I also can't believe that I've just avoided Kirby games for my entire life.
Yeah, no, I love hearing that. It's so fun to see that game from, my childhood still holds up all these decades later. So
yeah, to a bunch of people that have never played it before. So
yeah,
that's always the fun part about the show too, is not only like it's introducing new games to ourselves, right? But anybody who, maybe has for whatever reason missed out on this game too, maybe like we can kind of convince them to give it a shot. Because again, if you haven't played this game, I'm trying to convince you to give it a shot. It's on Switch, you know what I mean? If you have like the Game Boy app on the Switch or whatever, so just download that and play it on there. It has rewind, so if you're terrible, you can still beat the game pretty quick.
Yeah.
All right, so this is the time of the show where we randomly select what game we are playing next. So I'm going to hit that randomizer if you guys are ready. Okay. Andre, we have a fighting game published by THQ, developed by AKI, released for the Nintendo 64 in November of the year 2000.
Oh man, there were so many weird fighters on the 64. Is it Hex something? Is that
Hexen? It's not Hexen.
Oh.
So the genre of fighting, it kind of throws you a little bit. It's a wrestling game.
Okay, wrestling is the first thing I was thinking of. I heard THQ. So that tripped me up. That's not fair. I demand a redo. Okay, I mean, is it one of the WCW versus NWO games then?
It's WWF No Mercy.
Okay, well, I was close. I was in the ballpark.
Yeah, for sure.
Those games are classic. All those N64 wrestling games are all amazing.
Yeah, I can't wait to play this one. I haven't played it in so long. So I used to play it all the time when I was a kid. My friends, like, we used to play it together and stuff like that, 4 players on the N64. So it was so awesome doing that. So Yaiser, this might have to be one that like we link up for and try to play together. Because definitely the multiplayer in this one is huge.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm down whenever we can.
All right. So now that that's done, Andre, do you have a retro recommendation for us to play, to add to our list?
It feels weird recommending this game as retro because I revisited it recently and it doesn't feel retro at all. But given it has been a popular talking point recently, not the game specifically, but the franchise it comes from, so I want to recommend F-Zero GX, the last proper console F-Zero game. Now, I think 20 years ago this year, I think actually. I replayed through the entire thing, including the story mode, which a lot of people consider to be borderline impossible, and it actually wasn't as hard as I remembered. But yeah, this game holds up amazingly well. It looks great. It plays amazing. It has, they went all in on the story aspect, which is weird for a series that really never had any story, but it's super fun, super weird, and I dig it all. Highly recommend F-Zero GX, and I hope, we get a sequel or a remake one of these days. But yeah, just a ton of fun.
Cool. Yeah, that's just one of the IPs that Nintendo is just like leaving it in the closet, right? Like they're not bringing it out for anything. It's another Nintendo IP that I never really got into either. I never got into F-Zero as a kid. I knew a couple friends who had the games, but I would kind of just pick them up and play them pretty casually, but I never really got into them. Mario Kart kind of stole my heart for the whole racing genre for the Nintendo stuff. So
Mario Kart kind of stole F-Zero.
Yeah.
To be fair, yeah. I didn't know F-Zero really even had characters until Smash Bros. So as soon as I saw Captain Falcon, I was like, wait, he's from a racing game? I had to do a little bit of research when I found that out. But yeah. So no, that's an awesome suggestion. We did not have that one on the list yet, and it would be great to play another GameCube game soon. So
well, there you go.
Awesome. Well, Andre, thank you very much for joining us. Can you tell the people where they can find you one last time?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And if you want to follow what I do, you can find us over on GameXplain on YouTube, where, as I mentioned, we cover all kinds of things, but primarily Nintendo. So check it out if you want to hear any more of my Nintendo ramblings about whatever.
Yeah, and he'll probably tell you how he feels about the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Yes, I may have just a thing or two or 1,000 to say about the movie. All good things. Just to clarify.
It's an amazing movie for what it's worth. I've seen it 4 times now, which may be about a third of the times that you've seen it. So
I think that's exactly right.
Nice.
Yaiser, you've seen it, right?
I saw most of it, and then Cora fell asleep, so we
turned it off.
Yeah,
I get you. Yeah, it's so good though. I couldn't believe how good Jack Black was as Bowser. By the way,
such a fun performance. Yeah,
love it. It's great. But all right, we'll let you get out of here and check us out next week as we play WWF No Mercy on the N64. Take care, everybody.
Peace.